Things you would never bring up in therapy, you could bring up here.
What's the best way to move through heartbreak that ended in cheating?
I love that you said move through your heartbreak, because that is the key. It's to not be stagnant. The thing that has gotten me through all my inspired relationships, including my divorces, out of my head and out of my house. I think those are the most dangerous places you can be. And yes, I know, like, if you're an introvert like me, you need to be in solitude many times. But overall, to be out of your head is the most dangerous space to be in. All the spinning thoughts and the playbacks. And then out of your house, look, to get out and to see the world is wide and beautiful. Have smart feet, get somewhere, whether that is on a coffee date or that is in a community or wherever that, or it's maybe on the beach, you know? And then the cheating part, that's a separate piece. I think the work there is to know that one's decision to cheat is not tied to your worth and how you love and your capacity to love. A lot of times infidelity has nothing to do with the person that cheated on or even a relationship. It's something that they have to work through, you know? And so if you can separate that event from you and your ability to love, process all of that out of your house, out of your head, move through it.
Learning to accept is difficult. Learning to forgive them is harder. Why am I stuck?
So choosing to and wanting to forgive someone, but the inability to, I think that's where the stuckness lives, right? Why is it hard to forgive this person? And how much of that has to do with you and your own story and activation and not the person or the situation? Overall, I think forgiveness is more difficult when it has to do with us and our story and what's activated, right? So it's easier to forgive a stranger, for example, than it is to forgive someone you really care about. And that's because it's close. That's because that person that you're trying to forgive has hurt you more, because strangers can't hurt us as much as people who are close. And that hurts. Going into that hurt, why it hurt, and sitting and exploring there is where the stuckness is, right? When you realize that hurt comes from older wounds or your story, or, you know, maybe a false belief or truths that you feel that are not true, that you carry, that you live with, that's the stuff that is going to get you stuck. So it isn't about why you can't forgive. Actually, no, it isn't about not forgiving. It's about why you can't forgive, assuming you're making a choice to forgive.
Can I still find a partner as a woman of age 36? Good men are taken, and I got cheated and left.
First, I want to normalize the feeling and the fear behind your question. At 36, or really at any age, it's easy to believe the narrative that all the good ones are taken, right? And that belief comes from scarcity thinking. It's your brain trying to protect you from disappointment, possibly by lowering your expectations. But it's not true. Of course, there are good men out there. Men who are single, not because they're broken or something's wrong with them, but because life timelines are different now and people focus on career, healing, or simply don't know or don't meet the right person, you know, until later. But what matters more than age is alignment. A good man for you isn't just about being decent. It's about being available, emotionally mature, and wanting to co-create the kind of relationship you're looking for. And those qualities don't expire at 30. They deepen with life experience. If you hold the belief that all the good ones are gone, you'll unintentionally close yourself off to possibilities. But if you shift the lenses to curiosity and openness, meeting people where they are, not where your fears say they should be, you'll notice there are still plenty of men out there who are not only good, but also ready.
How do I go from being single on purpose to being in a relationship?
You know, when I look back at all my love experiences, when I was really desperately looking for love, for some reason, it never came. And then when I just got busy with my life, people fell from the sky. And I feel like there's some science behind this. I feel like when we are lying with desperation and we're, announced that we're ready to now be in a relationship, and so we are on dating apps and we're swiping and we're just putting it out there. Um, Sometimes it flips a magnet, Sometimes the announcement doesn't have to be anything other than with you. And yes, dating apps for tools and being social, and you have to make an effort. Of course, you have to leave your house, I think, definitely. But instead of trying to find love, just try to have a good time. Just go where you feel good. Surround yourself with people who move you, make you feel alive. Do things that tap into flow states. Build something. Where are you going, and then who's going with you? And if you flip that around, you'll be going alone. Get busy with your life, because that's attractive, and that will flip the magnet back, as opposed to, okay, I'm ready, and then desperately trying to search for love. A lot of people who have everything except the love, it's harder for them because they want that piece so bad, and usually doesn't come.
When a partner activates you, how do you know if it's a wound that needs healing or compatibility?
When it's an activated wound, the intensity feels disproportionate, right? Your reaction is bigger than what the situation calls for. A small behavior like being late or like a certain tone of voice can trigger deep pain, something from your story, and it echoes. It feels familiar. The emotion has like deja vu roots. It reminds you of how you felt, say when you were a kid or in that other relationship, right? In another formative past relationship. It shifts with awareness. That's another point, right? When you name the wound, this reminds me of not, say, feeling chosen, right? Or desired. This change lessens. The pattern softens when you work on it, when you work through it, when you reflect, doing therapy. Another way is there's potential for healing. With communication and your partner's willingness, you can move through it together. So, how do you know when it's incompatibility? It's not old wounds. It's about core needs. For example, say you want kids and your partner doesn't, right? Or you guys want different lifestyles, or there's some sexual mismatch, or things that don't line up. That could be more under the umbrella of incompatibility. It doesn't mean that your relationship won't work. It just means that that is not coming from activation, right? Also, it feels like maybe you're trying to fit into shoes that don't belong to you. Maybe there's some friction, not just like a trigger, like you're consistently forcing something that never feels neutral. And finally, if there's a lot of incompatibility, it can drain you. Instead of feeling energized and connected, it could feel the other way. It could feel like there's drift, and you don't know why. So that's how you know.
When does standing in the fire with someone become toxic?
In one of my books, I don't know which one, I wrote, I will give you my hand, but not my life. And that's based off in my first marriage, I gave her my life, not just my hand. And the whole ship went down, right? And so my learning is in relationships, not just romantic relationships, but also with friendships, you can sit with them in their fire. So whether that is addiction, depression, whatever they're going through, but you can't allow their fire to catch you on fire, right? They can't take you hostage. So you ask them, how can I be supportive? But at the same time, you have to ask yourself what you're willing to do, how you're willing to show up, how much energy, how much are you willing to contribute, but also protecting your own space. And I got to say, this is hard because for most of us, we don't know space because we gave everything. We grew up fast. We self-sacrificed. And so one of the things that I used to believe, and I think part of this is cultural, being Korean, is like, you go down, I go down with you, you know? This is the our marriage is the Titanic, and no one's getting out of this alive. That's not what I believe anymore. We have our own lives, our own containers, and I will give you my hand. I will ask you how I can support you, how can I help you during this time, but I will not give you my life. You're not taking me with you. I know for some people that sounds selfish. I used to think that. It is not. It's actually healthy. And here's the other thing: if both of you guys go down, well, there's no chance, there's no hope, right? So one person has to actually be in a space where they can give you a hand, So ask your partner what he needs, and then ask yourself what you're willing to give without giving everything, right? You're not giving your life to someone, you are giving your hand to someone.
How do you know if you're moving towards secure attachment or just falling out of love with your partner?
Both could be happening, and usually does. And by the way, if you hear that static, it's not static, it's the rain pouring down. And the reason why both can be happening is because as we become more securely attached, assuming that our partner doesn't work on herself or isn't growing, is still in a different unhealthy form of attachment, the dynamic of the relationship changes. And when the dynamic of the relationship changes, people start drifting, and you may start to fall out of love with your partner. So here's some ways that here's a litmus test. Oh my God. Here's a litmus test. If over time you are feeling safer, closer, more connected to yourself, not your partner, to yourself, or not just your partner, but to yourself. If you feel comfortable with yourself, if you feel more, if you're having a better relationship with yourself over time, that probably means that your relationship you're in, it has a secure attachment, right? If you are feeling drift, more disconnection with self, and more alone, and holy shit, do you hear that thunder? Then it may be falling out of love. If you feel more disconnected with yourself, as I say, if you're breaking up with yourself because of the relationship is causing you to, you may be falling out of love.
In therapy, how much does the therapist see of me as a projection of their shit?
That's a great question. The therapists wrestle with this all the time. It's called countertransference. So here's the deal. Self-awareness is the filter, right? A therapist has to constantly check in with herself. Is this feeling about my client, or is it about me? Where is it coming from? And if I'm reacting strongly, if I'm being activated, you got to pause and track, right? Does this remind me of my own history? Did something happen with my story that's activating this? Does it have to do with my own wounds or relationships? So use, don't suppress. Sometimes projections can be useful data. And if I feel anger or sadness or even, hope in the room, you got to explore whether my client might be stirring that up in others too. The key is not unloading it on your client, of course, but it's noticing the exchange. And that is useful information. So the answer isn't that projection never happens. It does. It happens all the time. And the art of therapy is learning to notice it, to own it, and not let it hijack the client's process. Now, here's the thing. It's not easy. And therapists are human too. And this is the shit that we don't talk about. Some therapists, myself maybe included, we don't see our blind spots. And we have to, instead of allowing the activation to cause a reaction in us, to actually, because you got to put in the reps, right? Depending on your story, we have to actually practice noticing, sitting with, processing our own shit.
When does therapy become a crutch? Can you go too often?
Yes, I think therapy can be a crutch if you're not actually doing the homework. Therapy is a space where you have revelations, which is 50%, right? What's happening underneath, connecting dots, lots of healing in that way because the space is safe. But after that, I think the other half is the execution, right? Are you drawing boundaries? Are you doing what needs to be done for growth to continue, or growth to actually happen, in the sense that you're going to change your life? Because you could just process and talk until the cows come home, but if you don't put any action behind that, is your life really going to change? You know? And one could argue, yes, once internally, your internal life changes, then the external changes. Sure. But that also requires reps and work. And so I think a lot of people say they're in therapy and they use it as a crutch to tell other people and themselves that they are working on themselves, but they actually don't do anything but come in every Tuesday with a latte and just talk about their feelings. And, might be helpful, but how much change is really happening? You just have to be honest. No one knows except you.
Have you ever had feelings for a client or patient?
This is such an interesting topic, and one of the things I talk about in my new book, Shit Therapists Would Never Tell You. Yes, I've had crushes with therapists. I've had clients confess feelings and crushes toward me. And underneath of these crushes, there's a lot of stuff happening. There's projection. There's people feeling safe and mistaking the feeling of safety and being heard and seen as chemistry connection. And then there's also just legit attraction that doesn't have to mean anything, but people are just attractive, right? All of it should be processed. And these are things that we don't talk about, but as humans colliding, having an exchange, yes, of course, attraction, connection, crushes, it all happens in the therapy room. In my book, I talk about how I was about to take on a client, met her at a coffee shop for an intake, saw her, was instantly attracted to her, decided not to take her on as a client because I just thought it would get in the way of therapy. And I also wanted to ask her out. And so and which I think is irresponsible, but hold on. But we went out for coffee, and I did it because I felt the return. I did it because I think we both admitted that there was a strange attraction. And so because of that, maybe she should go see someone else. And so because of that, maybe we should have coffee. Anyway, stuff like this happens. And what's important is that we're aware of it. That's what's important, and that we process it, that we don't just act on it, right?